Hi everybody, I'm Mike and thanks for tuning in to Lunchbucket Leftovers. Together we're going to make a meal that's so good you'll want to take the leftovers for lunch tomorrow at work. We're going to start with a mixed grill. It'll consist of boneless country ribs that we turn into burnt ends. In addition to that, we'll also make sweet and fiery grilled wings, hot and fast. On the grill, we'll also go with some potatoes that we turn into wedges, with some spices and olive oil. It'll be great and it's guaranteed to wow everybody at the table. So if you're ready, I'm ready. Let's get started. Start with making our injection. We're going to take normal apple juice. In addition to that, we're going to take some Mississippi Grind and we'll mix in a little bit of AP. And then for that fiery note that we're going to use, we're going to put in some cayenne. Just a little bit, but not enough to make mama notice the change and complain about it. So I've got the apple juice on the stove heating up. We don't want to go to a full boil. We just want to let it simmer so that when we take our various seasonings and have them all ground up, they're already nice and fine, so they incorporate into the apple juice and make it just a normal injection. So while the apple juice is coming up to temp, we're just going to take the spices. We're going to put them in the pesto. Maybe. And it's okay to use as much as you want. It's okay to also use whatever you have laying around the house. You got to remember that my kitchen is not like your kitchen, and so I'm not always going to have the same things that everybody else has on their shelves. So all we're going to do is take our stone and grind it up so that we get a nice fine powder. This will help to break it down that much easier when the apple juice is up to temp. That'll be good. So it looks like the apple juice is simmering. So let's take a look and see how it works out. So now that I've got the spices all ground up and the apple juice is almost up to temperature, it looks like we're getting pretty close to starting to mix the two and make our injection. As you can see, I've got the apple juice almost up to temp. As you can tell by the steam that's starting to come off, I've got my powder here, and you can tell it's pretty fine, so it's ready to be incorporated into the apple juice once it gets all mixed in and saturated. So I'm just going to start to sprinkle some in to let it start to mix in. We want to get it to a point where the apple juice gets saturated, but not so much so that it starts to settle on the bottom. Remember, we want it to be consistent and not start to powder up at the bottom. So we just take a regular stir and start to mix it in. All right, we'll just take a pinch at a time. What we're basically doing is just adding flavor to the apple juice so that it becomes more of an injection and we get the injection into the heart of the meat as it cooks or grills. So you want to just keep stirring it. Don't want to let up on it. Just keep stirring it, keeping it on relatively lower heat. As you can see that by the steam that's coming off, it's starting to really get up to temperature. I'll pull it in a little closer so you can take a closer look and see. But you can see that it's starting to get to the bottom there. So with that in mind, it looks like we've got just about enough of the seasoning in there. And we don't need to add any more. We want this seasoning that's in there to start breaking down and get saturated. Okay, I think we're getting pretty close to the point where we're ready to take the heat off and let it start to cool down. And once it gets cooled down, we'll put it back in the bottle that the apple juice came in and let it get refrigerated until we're ready to inject it. It's just about at a point where it's very, very evenly distributed throughout the apple juice. And I think we're at a point now where it's ready to come off the heat and we can let it cool, get it back in the bottle. So now that the injection has cooled down enough, I'm going to go ahead and put it back in the bottle that the apple juice came in, and it'll go into the refrigerator to cool down. As you can see, it's nice consistency and there's no settlement on the bottom, and it looks like it's going to be in good shape. While we got the fire cooking, we'll go back inside and get the injection going and get the pork seasoned before we get up to temp. That way we're all set and ready to go. So I'm going to just start with a wax cube. It's very basic, very simple, and it lights fast and it's reliable. So when I start a fire, I usually go with a little mound around the outer edge of the wax cube, and then I'll just start to slowly build on top of it. That way the charcoal catches on after a little while. So I just slowly build up the coals right around the fire. While we're waiting for the grill to get up to temperature, now it's time to get the pork started. So we're going to start out with a rack of the boneless country ribs that we're going to use as our base for the burnt ends. We're going to start out by simply taking that injection that we made earlier and just going right on down the ends of the meat and injecting it in just a little bit. This meat is super lean, so you want to try to get as much moisture and flavor into the meat as you possibly can. You got to be careful though, because sometimes when you're injecting the meat, it will start to spray out. So one trick that I've learned when injecting is to pinch off the end where the needle goes in, and that way it minimizes any of the spraying of the injection. So the only spice that I'm going to put on the pork is going to be the Mississippi Grind. It's going to stay consistent with the rub that we injected. In addition to that, it's also got a nice sweet flavor, which is what I like to put on pork. And I'll just do all 4 sides evenly, get a probe injected into it for the temp control, and we'll be in business. So as you can see, I got all the pieces nicely coated on all 4 sides, and I'll just put it right on the smoker. Somewhere between 225 and 240, I think, is where we'll hover. And this should take me a couple hours to get done. And then once we get it to a point of about 180, 190 degrees, we'll pull it, cube it up, put it in some sauce, and then right back in a pan to finish up until we get to about 205. Anyway, hang around. We're making progress. Rather than inject each individual piece of chicken, I decided to just pour the remaining apple juice and spices into a pan and let the chicken brine until it's time to put on the grill. And this is what I'm going to come out with. I just did a temperature check on my acorn, and this is the problem you run into when it spikes too high, is that your meat cooks too fast. And I think that's what's going on right now, as I'm already up to 165 degrees Fahrenheit for the pork temp, and it's been just about 45 minutes. A little faster than I would have wanted. So I got to figure out how to slow it down and save this cook. Since the temps keep spiking, I have to be super mindful about what's going on with it and not overcook the meat. The way I'm going to do that is by closing off all the vents, but in addition to that, I also have to keep spraying the meat so that it doesn't dry out too fast. I'm going to do that with apple cider vinegar, which will help to not only cool the meat, but help to keep it nice and moist. I ran into a little bit of a problem with my grill temps. They went a little higher than I would have wanted, so it took me a little longer to get the meat down than what I had anticipated. But just in burping the grill and closing off all the vents, it looks like I got everything under control, and I'm going to be right on track to where I want it to be. It looks like, according to the Thermopen, the temperatures are right about where they should be for the pork. Time to get them pulled, and let's get them in some sauce. Looking at the meat, it looks like it's in pretty good shape. You're not seeing a whole lot of the rub coming off on my finger, so that means that the outside's pretty dry. So I think that the best thing to do now, let's get them off. So this is where things are really going to start coming together. We're going to take the pork, cube it up, put it in the pan, mix it in with some butter, some brown sugar, that leftover rub that we ground out this morning, and we'll mix it in with some sauce. We'll start by cutting everything up into little 1x1 cubes and then put it into a little aluminum foil pan. At that point, we will then add in the brown sugar, the sauce, and the leftover rub that we had from earlier. Take in the seasoning from this morning, just spread it throughout. Grab some brown sugar. We'll add in some sauce. And this is just stuff that I had in my refrigerator. This is what it should look like when it goes back on the grill. Now, time to get it covered up. So for the sides, I'm going to take 3 potatoes. I quartered them up, covered them in some olive oil, and now I'm putting them on top of a grilling pad. Once I do that, I will then add some grilling spices to them. And in about 30 to 40 minutes, they'll be absolutely fantastic, nice and toasty. And it's a nice twist on baked potato. Our wings have been brining pretty much all day, and they're ready to now go on the grill as well. So we're going to put them with the spice side down, and then we'll get them covered in 2 different spices. So we're going to start out with this Kickin chicken. It's going to give a nice after bite to it. We want that to be the second taste that you get when you chomp into them. Then we'll follow that up with a honey hickory, which will be a nice sweet taste. It will help to offset a lot of the spiciness from the Kickin chicken. While we're at it, let's turn the potatoes. And then we'll follow that up with a little sprinkling on the vegetable seasoning. Chicken's really starting to come along. Let's take a look and see what the Thermopen says. You can see that it's getting there. Take a look at a flat. You can see that the flat is right on the money. So we're gonna pull the flats over to the side and keep the drums on the heat. And we should be done pretty soon. See, 149, 149, 150, 151. And take a look at a flat. We're at 170, 177. So I'd say the flats are there. So now that we're finished, you can see with a little bit of patience, you can make a great meal with things that you have laying around your house in your freezer. I can't wait to dig into it. If you like what you saw, please click on subscribe, as I'll try to put videos out on a regular basis. Thanks again for tuning in.